Capcom didn't want to re-release the classic Resident Evil games because we have all those remakes which provide the superior experience. They didn't really see the value. So I read this headline and it was one of those things I wanted to do a video on this just because I could not disagree more in the sense that I don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed the remix that they've been able to do for the most part. You know, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4. I personally did not like Resident Evil 3 remake. So the fact that they're trying to state that these are superior is interesting in the sense that I just don't agree with them whatsoever. So yeah, it's one of those weird situations where they kind of think that they were able to kind of make things better when I don't agree with that sentiment really much at all. So we'll go ahead and get into it. We'll read some of the article here, and per usual, I'll give my thoughts as we go along, and then kind of we'll go from there. So, despite all the lavish modern remakes, there's a certain magic about the PS1 era Resident Evil trilogy. Yep, the tank controls, spooky pre-rendered settings, and Jill Sandwich Camp all combine to create a survival horror experience still worth returning to. While Capcom itself doesn't seem to see the allure of its own old games, after all, why would you want to play through dusty old relics when the shiny new remakes are available? And I don't know, man. Me personally, I grew up with those games, so I'm right there with them when they said that there's a certain magic to those games. You know what I mean? When especially for anyone that isn't a retro gamer or someone that wasn't around during that era, that's one of the things that you got to remember if you ever decide to go back and play some older games, some retro games and stuff like that, is you got to remember that you got to think of what those games were like at the time. And that doesn't go just for video games, that goes for like movies and TV shows and stuff like that. You got to understand that when those games or TV shows or movies had came out, a lot of the times you'll see, you know, cliches in them and everything like that. Like, oh, I've seen this so many times, so many different mediums of entertainment and everything. But a lot of the times, the older things were the very first time you've seen that type of stuff. So seeing some of the horror aspects in some of the video games back then, especially in the Resident Evil games, was all kind of a new experience. So you know, you got to remember that when it comes down to this type of these types of mediums and everything like that, and keep that in mind, and not just think that, you know, because of the fact that it is older and you've seen it in so many different things, that it wasn't something that would have blown your mind at the time, you know, because that that's just it's just a modern day look at it, and you can't really do that when it comes down to playing older stuff or watching older stuff. So that's what Capcom said when it was first approached by CD Projekt digital store GOG about re-releasing the classic PC versions of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. GOG Senior Business Development Manager Marcin, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name, was one of the people spearheading the project, and he tells the game business that convincing Capcom of the value of these old games was a particular challenge, which is wild because it makes me wonder if the people at Capcom are a lot of the older heads that were there when those original games were released, or if it's a bunch of new people that are just kind of gotten with the company in the past couple years. Because I don't know, man, I feel like it's hard to believe that anyone that was around during that time when it came down to developing those three original games would kind of have to have so much convincing, from what it sounds like, that they have value and that they are something that the gamers would want to have. You know what I mean? Especially considering that to this day, like Resident Evil, the originals still, in my opinion, have a very like good fan base that still care about the originals and still praise them to this day for what they are. You go on like YouTube or something like that and you watch some videos from like the older games, or watch like people that are doing streams. There's people out there that still do streams when it comes down to the older Resident Evil games. Like one of the YouTubers that I like, his name is Albert underscore FN underscore Wesker. This dude, his pretty much channel is based on just him streaming the older Resident Evil games, usually like two, one, and then sometimes three. And then every once in a while he'll do some other games, but for the most part, it's just him playing Resident Evil with just different, either replaying the game over and over again, or like doing it with like mods or something like that. So there is a niche out there, and there are people that get into that type of stuff still, and they do want to watch that type of gameplay. So That was actually their main counter argument when we were trying to bring back the classic games. The manager said they were like, okay, we have all those remakes. It's already the superior experience. So they didn't really see the value of bringing back the classic versions of vanilla ones. And that's wild to me, man, because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but I don't think the remakes are superior to the originals. Out of the three that come to mind, obviously it's Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake, and then Resident Evil 4 remake. I don't think any of those three are better than the originals. When it comes down to the three remakes, my favorite out of those three is Resident Evil 2 remake. You know what I mean? I streamed it the other night and got to replay it again. Just do the quick run through with Leon, scenario A, and it's one of those things. It's a great remake. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's enjoyable. I like what they were able to do as far as redesigning the police station and everything, the RPD station. But at the end of the day, it's still not superior to the original, in my opinion. There was just things that they changed from the original that I felt like were for the worst. Like one of the ones that really comes to mind is the fact that when you play as Leon or Claire, you pretty much just play the same story but just in their version. So with them as the main character, where you still get chased by Mr. X, you still have to fight William Birkin. The cool thing about the original was that when you played as one player, you were doing a completely different experience, and the decisions that you made in that first run with Leon or Claire affected the other run that you would do with Claire or Leon in playing the scenario B. So if you decided to leave an item behind, or you decided to take an item, that item would either be there or wouldn't be on your second run with the other character. So little things like that, some of the areas that were kind of cut when it came down to the other games, like Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 3 remake, there's sections of that game that are cut out completely. You don't have the the graveyard section, and then there's another section I can't remember that comes to mind off the top of my head, but that they just completely like took out from the remake. And it's like you notice stuff like that, and you can't help but compare the two. So the fact that they were trying to say that the originals aren't as good as the remakes, I don't believe that personally. I think the originals still hold a lot of water compared to what the remakes are, because of the fact that I feel like in some aspects they were more innovative, and there was more love and care for them, in my opinion. So it's just interesting to hear that they make that type of comment when it comes down to the remakes. So, look, folks, if I were to make a list of my favorite games of the past decade, the Resident Evil 2 remake in particular would easily rank in the top 10. Yeah, I think so. Excellent, yes. Meaningful, expanded over the original, also yes. But if you put a gun to my head, you still could not convince me to spit out the idea that it's a superior replacement of the 1998 classic. It's an incredible companion piece, but in no way does it render its predecessor obsolete. And I can't agree more. I gotta say, like, yes, it was a meaningful expansion over the original, and yes, they were able to innovate stuff, which was pretty cool in their own sense. But at the end of the day, there's not that same experience when it comes down to it, and there are aspects of it that are just they're not the same. No matter how much you try to make it seem like, oh, this is gonna be better because of the fact that it's updated gameplay or the graphics are better, that's not enough, in my opinion, to try to make it seem like, oh, it's, well, overall, because of that, it's a better game in general. I just, yeah, and in the fact that they have that kind of mindset is just wild to me. So it took a lot of convincing that, hey guys, there's an audience that has a lot of memories with those games, and they would love to be able to experience exactly the same game again. The manager continues. So thankfully, we were able to convince them. They trust us into working on one of their biggest IPs, if not the biggest. And kudos to that dude, you know what I mean, for being able to kind of see the value in it. Because when it comes down to them deciding to put those games on GOG, it's a subject that holds a very special place in my heart, because of the fact that my very first video that I did when it came down to this YouTube channel was the fact that they were going to be bringing Resident Evil, I believe it was 3, to GOG, to GOG. So if you go back on my channel and you look back at my very first video, it's me talking about that specific subject of them adding that one of the Resident Evil games, which is it means something to me at that point because of the fact that I love those classic games and I think they're great. And I was really thinking like this is something I want to talk about is the fact that they were able to bring those classics to a modern kind of streaming service when it came down to video games. So, being able to actually play older games like that and have a video gaming library online. So the fact that they were able to do that, I think that's really cool, and I'm really happy that they made that a possibility. So the effort paid off too, as the manager says the games got an absolutely phenomenal reception. We had like 94 positive reviews on GOG for all of them, and that was also reflective in the sales. It proved there is an audience for these types of games, so it doesn't matter if the game was remade or not. The classical versions, the versions we all remember from childhood, they still hold a lot of value. And yeah, it's you got to think too as far as Capcom is concerned. Like you guys can look at the remakes as superior, but one of the things that the remakes don't have to the originals, and at least not right now, is that nostalgic factor. The fact that you can look back at those games and think, "Damn, like when I first played this game, I was this old," or when I seen this for the first time playing this game, like it made me feel this type of way. Yeah, eventually you're gonna get that with the remakes for like the newer generation and the newer gamers, but at the end of the day, we're not there yet. And the fact that they kind of look at it as just like, oh well, it's just superior, so they shouldn't like really care to have those type of games to be able to play. It's like no, that's not how that works. Like you got to think this franchise is as big as it is for a reason. People love these games for a reason, and it's because they have that love and care for them because a lot of people grew up with them and it was something that meant something to them. So yeah, it's just an interesting aspect whenever you hear, you know what I mean, like some of the higher ups, how they look at some of their own IPs and some of their own products and stuff like that as just, oh well, we made a better version, so that's what people are, I'm sure, are gonna like. And it's like not necessarily. Like you really got to listen to the fans and what they want as opposed to thinking that you know what's best for them. So I don't know, man. It was pretty interesting to kind of hear that. And then we had some of the comments here that were left by people that I thought were pretty interesting. So and the first person right here says, I prefer the newer versions because I could never master tank controls. I never forget watching my best friends playing the OG versions, though. And I've heard that argument that, some people are like, I don't think I could go back and play those games because I can't get used to the tank controls. Personally, I love the tank controls, even though that it can get janky at times and it can feel a little bit weird. That was one of the things that added to the factor of it being a survival game is the fact that you have like a zombie walking towards you or an enemy that's pretty fast that can attack you, that you're having to kind of use the tank controls to kind of spin slowly and aim in the right direction, kind of a thing. It added to the horror aspect of you trying to survive, which I thought was pretty cool. And then we got the next one here. So the OGs are how I got into Resident Evil at 5 years old. There's my daughter's entry point too. The remakes are good, but nothing beats the original. And yeah, like nothing, I don't think nothing will beat the original. I feel like even later on, like I said, with the nostalgic factor, even when the remakes become more nostalgic, I feel like there's going to be a portion of people out there that are still going to feel like the remakes are superior. So the next one we got here, I love the RE2 remake, but it made me get out my Nintendo 64 to play the original. And that's one of the things, like even with the remix, like yeah, you are going to want to go back if you have the game to be like, well, how was the original from what I remember? Was it not as good? Or was the remake really that much better? And a lot of the times people will play the original and be like, all right, cool, like the remake's good, but the original still beats it. Or you know what I mean? It could be the other way around. Like as much as I love the original for the nostalgic feeling, I gotta say the remake was able to kind of do a better experience in it for me. You know what I mean? But to just flat out come out and be like, oh, it's superior, it's weird. So then we got the next one. I get so tired of people arguing over which is better, the OGs or the remakes, which is why I said we wouldn't have anything to remake. Yeah, and I mean that is a good way to look at it. Like if it wasn't for the OGs, then there wouldn't be anything to remake and make quote unquote better. And then the next one, without the originals, we wouldn't even have the remakes. So yeah, there's that. Then we got the next one. The remakes are great, but suggesting they made the originals obsolete is ignorant on their part and honestly a bit egotistical. The originals are legendary games for a reason. Exactly. And I feel like they put it really well. It is very egotistical to be able to consider that, like, oh well, we made these better than the originals. It's like, no, and that's one of the problems too when it comes down to filming, like to films and everything. When they try coming out with these remakes, like Disney and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, you can update it and kind of change things in a way that you prefer, but just because that's what you prefer doesn't mean you're actually making it better all the time, you know. And making that suggestion that the originals are now obsolete is wild, because no matter what, there's gonna be people that are gonna prefer the originals and they're gonna like those ones more. Even as time progresses, you know, there's gonna be people in the newer generations or gamers that are gonna play later on and be like, you know what, as much as I prefer, you know, the controls of the remake and how that kind of looks with the graphics, there's something about the original that I think it's better, you know. So having that mindset of it's gonna make it obsolete is just wild. So, and then we got the last one here. So, absolutely agree. I love the remix, but I'll never forget first playing Resident Evil games on the PS1 in fourth grade back in the late 90s. I was a big fan of Romero Carpenter horror films in general, so those games were absolutely incredible to 8-year-old me. Their argument applied to films would get laughed out of the room. Oh, we have a remake of Total Recall. We have a remake of RoboCop. Why watch the original? Which is absolutely insane. Same reason everyone hates Lucas garbage remakes of Star Wars while hiding the originals. If both were available, it wouldn't be a big deal. I love the Final Fantasy VII remake, Twin Snakes, MG, Metal Gear Solid 1 remakes, but still playing, or RE remakes, but still playing the originals once a year, even have them emulated on my phone. And yeah, it's true. You know what I mean? Like when it comes down to remakes with films, there's a lot of people that don't like the remakes and the fact that they've been doing that. So it is an argument that can be made with those as well. So I don't know. A video came out a little bit longer than I was hoping, but yeah, this is. I just have a lot of thoughts on this, and it's just very interesting to kind of hear the takes of the individuals that are in charge of the IPs that they own. Like I said, they own these properties, but it still feels like at times they don't quite understand what they have on their hands, which is a really weird concept in my opinion. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that are in charge of it, so it's really their decisions to make. But I'm glad there was individuals out there that can kind of see the value in the originals. So yeah. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Do you guys think that because there are remakes of the Resident Evil games that the remakes are superior because of, like I said, either the graphics factor or because of the fact that like the gaming mechanics are updated? You know, I personally like I mean I made it very clear I don't quite agree with that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think and how you guys feel about this. So if you guys could leave your thoughts in the comments. If you guys could like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys have been watching this long, I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And yeah, until next time, Harmonic out. Peace.